Rebecca.
Yeah, Rebecca is doing
Okay, doing so many things. Sorry.
No, I was sorting out the YouTube.
Okay, it's fine. Let's do that first.
Equity Bank. So what we are doing?
She is presenting. Can you give the rights to her?
So what I'm going to do, we make her co-host.
Co-host, yes, it's fine.
After her presentation, we will know.
Is it done now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, are you able now to do this?
But then, it's something I know. Normally, okay, we are right.
It works. Okay. You're now co-host for the presentation. Dr. Beck, I wanted to ask
Next to me.
you.
Okay, because what happens is that we have to make a judgment. Not sometimes judging which one.
Exactly.
Yeah. The reason why I wanted to sit next to him, so I met him first.
Okay, this is Solomon.
Broadcast live.
He is our
So in
moderator.
case there is anything,
Yeah. So we wanted to see when it comes to the session after the remarks by the Minister of Trade.
you said we can't do first.
Solomon will invite us.
Okay, I remember.
I just wanted to see whether he sits first, then you present. What is the situation?
I just need
Just listen.
Okay. Okay, okay, sure.
Isn't it from your place?
Can she hear us from this?
Yes, Miss Perry.
Why does it? Oh, the second one is. So what are
You are everyone following it? Because their presentation, they will present.
Hello, Dr. Bless.
Why not?
now?
What now?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me also?
Oh, can you hear me?
Are we muted? Can you hear me?
No.
Do you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, they are mute. Let me say. Let me tell them they're mute. Yeah. So. Oh. Can you unmute?
Hi, Dr. Beth, do you hear me? Does she hear me? It means your the mic.
Sorry.
What about mic?
My is okay.
Dr. Beth, do you hear me? Hello?
Oh, Asal, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Do you hear
Oh,
me?
sorry. I think I'm the one who's muted. Just give me a second. Badu. Sorry, Asal, can you hear me? Sorry, it's my laptop that was muted, but can you hear me?
We hear you very well. Do you hear me?
Oh, perfect. I'm so sorry about that. So the system here is muted.
Okay, finally. Good. Wait here. Okay, Dr. Beth. Yeah, you can stop presenting now.
Okay. Well, and you can see my slides. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we see them. Yeah, you can enlarge when you present.
Okay.
Okay.
And they are moving. They're okay. They're clear. They are moving through the slides, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but those
We're
who
okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Beth, just if you want to.
Oh, but yeah, just stay on the call a little bit. Why is it not coming through the speakers?
This is the main. This is just
Okay. All right. So Asel, are we okay on the sequence? You had said that who is introducing Dr. Mwangi?
Yes, it will be Solomon. Do you see him on the screen? Do you see him now? Our youth representative.
I see him. Yes.
Youth leader. Yes, Solomon. So he will introduce the session. He will introduce Dr. James Mwangi. And
Okay.
so basically, once he starts speaking, you will start using the slides, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So after you said that you will also join, do we need to introduce you formally?
No, not me. I think if you introduce Dr. Mwangi, then that's fine, because I think the timing is quite short. So then Dr. Mwangi can say he's here with his team members. So, but I will help him move through the slides.
Okay, so then it's fine. So after he ends his presentation, then Solomon, you will invite, you will start questions. Yes, but I'm just wondering, we have, for example, for the first session, after
Yeah.
the final session, we have moderator summarizing, but it may not be easy for Solomon to summarize. If we need to summarize in a way, or we just switch the question, we can still ask moderator.
Okay, I seem to have lost your sound. Yeah, now you're back.
Okay. So then we will have questions that you received, but
Yes.
that we can mix. We don't have to ask one time from you. We will try to mix along the way. We will also adjust either online or those from here. Western, I think Western. No. Sarah will be speaking first. Because she will be the ones giving remarks on the history, then she will introduce. No, we discussed introduction. It was suggested to say. So remarks from Minister of Trade will come first, and then equity. This is the when Minister comes for discuss. Yeah.
But she won't introduce.
So
That's why the first speaker in here.
I'm wondering, Kamani, they've muted on their end. We should be able to receive sound either way.
Dr. Beck, I think we're set for now. Yeah, I need to disconnect.
Yeah. So sorry, just one more. If you can enable, do you see Equity Bank as one of the participants? I don't know if we are muted on your end.
We see it in the list.
Yeah, because we are using a room mic. We are using one microphone for the boardroom plus my laptop. So if you can also enable the Equity Bank microphone to be on, but we will mute it when we are not speaking.
Only for the microphone?
Yeah, for Equity Bank.
It should be fine, yeah? But I'm asking my colleagues who are here to help.
We should be fine. Just click on join audio. Just on.
Dr. Beck, step out
Yeah.
to see. Hand it over to Rebecca. She will help you, yeah? Thank you.
Okay, Equity Bank, we can't see.
For join audio. Click on join audio. Then call over internet. Okay, so are you able to hear me?
Equity Bank, we can't. Okay, we can see the mic.
Can you hear me from the Equity Bank speaker?
You're muted. You're muted.
Equity Bank is muted.
Okay, now can you hear me from the Equity Bank microphone?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
All right, we'll see you then at 3 o'clock.
No worries.
All right, good luck. Bye.
Video? Audio? Video? Is he on video?
Oh, they should. Sorry, one more. Can you see me on video through the Equity Bank?
Yes, I can hear you.
The boardroom, right? Not as Dr. Beth. Let me remove the one for Dr. Beth.
1, 2.
Can you see me on video as Equity Bank?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. So we'll see you at 3 o'clock.
All right.
Okay.
An angle where you can see that. Just some more.
I'm trying to advise one of them.
Are we muted? Yeah.
No. This participant is muted.
Mute us. Mute and remove.
Dr. Beth, you can stop the sharing.
I confirm with absent that we need to make sure that that's the administration.
Yes, so-
So you do it on WhatsApp.
Oh.
The format is out. One, and second,
Full screen, eh? Is it me? Oh, yes.
I can, but yeah. Yeah, moderator, I spoke to someone.
Yes, it is you.
I'm the host.
You're the co-host, but we are using. When you're making the panel.
She said,
The head people are asking me for the link.
Hey,
and.
at least me, I have it.
But he just said there will be somebody else. No? Yeah, okay, then we- they just wanted to give me space. Do you think we can-
Wano wavuddeyo nkyaka nja kwetaaga kuuka omulala. Ye yakalinyeeko n'aleka ttabu.
How come you? But it's celebration.
to come in
Oh,
person
that's
today.
great.
Just because I thought it's an opportunity to.
Yes. No, thank you. Because at
So
that
people in
time I was actually self-quarantined myself when we did that. So yeah. I couldn't. So that's what, I mean, I set this up as soon as the lockdown started. And so I've been operating from here throughout. So we can open and then it's just fine. And so we can do a lot of people from here and then the So like this, I've been able to meet people and have just the ambassadors, we sit over there in the balcony and, you know, it works.
Yeah, the ambassador also at his residence sets up attended even you cannot have this many people. And also because it's a bit noisy and then it's
Close to the-
here, so you
Guys,
It has been so difficult.
Elsie is going to be here. Yeah, but they're the MCs. They need to be there where they can move and do things.
She's joining online or she?
To be here. These two chairs, sorry. So you go there. Do this. Private sector and action. Who knew private sector and UN will be in the same sentence? It's a new world.
Okay.
Just everyone who is currently here with us at the meeting. I'd also love to recognize the presence of the people who are online, who are also attending with us the meeting today. The meeting today is the new generation UNCT meeting on the private sector towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. My name is Abeja Linda, and I am the founder and CEO of Bavaria Tech. My company is dedicated towards providing innovative ways towards improving the education system and also helping in human capital development in Uganda. I'm also representing the human capital development thematic area of the Youth Coalition for the SDGs. So me and Solomon, we are here representing the young people and the youth in the private sector because we realize that the private sector is very fundamental towards the acceleration of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we are here today to discuss further on how the private sector can come on board to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. So for now, I would love us to have an opening prayer, which Solomon can take lead.
Thank you so much, Linda. This can pray. Father, my God, we thank you for this afternoon. Lord Father, we thank you for this time and for the protection. We want to pray, Lord Father, that guide us, give us wisdom, and may you be with us as we are going to have this discussion today. Lord Father, may it be fruitful and impactful. We want to pray all this, believing in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Solomon, for that brief prayer. We shall go straight to the agenda. I would love to recognize the presence of Mr. Dimitri, who is the UNCDF, who is the head of the UNCDF office in Uganda. And I would love to welcome him to give us an opening note and an introduction of the participants.
Camera on you? Yes, was that one?
Good afternoon, colleagues. It's such a pleasure to be with you here today, and welcome to all our participants who are joining us physical as well as online. I would like to recognize the presence of Honorable Okrut, Minister for Special Duties at the Office of the Prime Minister, Ms. Rosa Malango, the Resident Coordinator for the United Nations, as well as our colleagues, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Turkey, and other dignitaries who are joining us for this event. As you know, today we are here to discuss and launch a very exciting and innovative idea of the private sector SDG platform that would allow the private sector to enhance its contribution to the national SDG agenda and to the achievement of Uganda's ambitious development goals. So without further ado, allow me to invite Ms. Rosa Malango, the UN Resident Coordinator, to deliver her welcoming remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dimitri. Good afternoon, good morning to our colleagues, depending on where you are. It is my honor to now deliver the remarks on behalf of the United Nations system in Uganda at this milestone event. Honorable Okrut, the Minister for General Duties and Focal Point Minister for SDGs in the Government of the Republic of Uganda. Honorable Amelia, Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives. Mr. Gideon, Executive Director of the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda. Dr. James Mwangi, Group Managing Director, CEO, Equity Group Holdings and Equity Group Foundation. The CEO Summit Team Leader, the Executive Director of the Uganda Bankers Association, dear colleague, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Turkey, the Counselor of the European Union, Head of Cooperation, partners from the United Nations System, development partners, members of the Youth Coalition for SDGs, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I am very pleased to welcome you to the New Generation UN Country Team meeting on private sector partnerships for Sustainable Development Goals acceleration in Uganda. I would like to welcome all partners and colleagues joining us both in person and online, representing government, private sector, development partners, the UN system, media, civil society, and youth leaders. But before I proceed, I wish to invite us to observe a minute of silence for the lives lost due to the triple challenges of COVID-19, gender-based violence, and climate change. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, today's partnership meeting is held in the framework of the reform of the United Nations, which came into effect 2 years ago on January 1st, 2019, as mandated by the UN General Assembly Resolution 72-279. The New Generation UNCT is a collective platform that aims to facilitate inclusive and strategic engagement in the spirit of the Charter of the United Nations. In this context, I am happy to welcome the diverse private sector community, including associations, multinationals, as well as small and medium enterprises, in line with the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, which recognizes the critical role of the private sector as partners in the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Achieving the 2030 Agenda requires both collective and individual actions from each and every one of us. Whether we work in the government, in civil society, in the private sector, and media, at global, regional, national, or subnational levels. Equitable partnerships informed by shared values must remain at the heart of our effort to drive the implementation of the SDGs in Uganda if we are to succeed, especially in the new global environment. Ladies and gentlemen, dear partners, COVID-19 has generated a severe global economic crisis with huge implications on the local economy. At the same time, it has provided an opportunity for developing countries like Uganda to further appreciate the need for domestic production, to exploit opportunities in regional markets, and to build more resilient healthcare systems and fast-track migration to digital systems. The joint UN socioeconomic impact analysis of COVID-19 revealed significant increases in the number of victims of violence and over 4 million informal sector workers, most of whom women and youth, who lost their sources of livelihoods. Our analysis also noted that the country is likely to backtrack on its journey to achieving SDG 1 on zero poverty, as the poverty headcount is likely to increase by 2 to 8 percentage points as a result of the containment measures which are necessary to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is informed by these findings that we developed a series of partnerships to address those most at risk of being left behind. Allow me to highlight a few. The partnership with the Youth SDG Coalition and the National SDG Secretariat to give a voice to youth across the country by inviting them to participate in the 1 Million SDG Solutions Innovation Challenge during the last decade. This was directly linked to a new partnership between UNDP and Stanbic Uganda, aiming to reinforce the youth who are working in the private sector to become successful employers as they continue. We are delighted to note that several of the youth identified through this medium have benefited from this initiative by UNDP and Stanbic Uganda. The United Nations system in Uganda, in partnership with Stanbic, also designed the Economic Enterprise Restart Fund, initially established as a 3-year COVID-19 impact relief fund worth several $1 million to help address the unprecedented financing needs of thousands of women and youth in savings and credit cooperatives and in village savings and loans associations across the nation. They do not have access to the formal economy, and the recovery will require their participation. As a UN system, we also partner with local governments, such as those in the Rwenzori region, the Uganda Investment Authority, and Operation Wealth Creation, to develop investment profiles in 5 key economic sectors as part of our efforts to unlock and promote the investment potential of the region across the peace, humanitarian, and development nexus. I welcome you and invite you to visit our website at www.uganda.un.org and to read about our works and our publications in these and other areas. Uganda's most impressive tourism, agricultural, and service-oriented opportunities deserve our support and our investment. Ladies and gentlemen, while the United Nations remains steadfast in supporting Uganda's development aspirations, especially during these unprecedented times of the pandemic, the needs are still enormous, and they call for a strengthened partnership with other actors. Allow me to point out a few areas and opportunities that will need to be addressed as our focus in the short and medium term. The development challenges have been magnified by COVID-19. This has generated one of the worst economic crises, exposing inequalities and fragilities both within and among countries. A successful recovery will depend on the availability and effectiveness of vaccines for all, and as well as the effectiveness of the stimulus measures that are implemented by stakeholders. The UN system is working to support government and private sector efforts to address these needs and scale up indigenous capacities to respond to the health needs of the country and UN personnel. Within this initiative, we appeal to partners to please join our efforts to ensure the safe and successful delivery of vaccines to the people of Uganda, starting with those who are most at risk at the front lines. The second area, the African Continental Free Trade Area. This agreement provides a huge opportunity for economic growth and socioeconomic transformation. With a membership of 55 member states, it will be the largest free trade area in the world, with a combined gross domestic product valued at over 3.4 trillion, and it will connect 1.3 billion people on the continent. This implies that a manufacturing Uganda will be able to target 1.3 billion Africans, including 44 million Ugandans. It is our hope that the conversations like the one today will help reinforce the collaboration required between the private sector and governments to fully take advantages of the opportunities created by AfTA. Third, while the private sector has been traditionally known to be profit-oriented, we are witnesses to the fact that they have been key partners in ensuring that no one is left behind through your engagement in socially responsible business practices that promote inclusive growth. When you take the right decision, youth and women entrepreneurs realize their potential and countries are able to grow while protecting their environment. I wish to take this moment to recognize the gender seal led by UNDP in Uganda with a growing number of businesses, which is evidence of what we can achieve when we work together. Lastly, emerging technologies. The emerging technologies have become the sure way for youth to create jobs, to improve business practices, and to promote efficiency in the public sector, creating opportunities for the over 78% of the population in Uganda, which is below 30 years of age. We count on the cooperation of the government by enabling policies and laws to help the youth and the private sector to unlock the potential of digital technologies to support Uganda's socioeconomic transformation. Before I conclude, I wish to convey our thanks to the Office of the Prime Minister for joining us in co-organizing this meeting as part of our shared journey to promote SDGs in Uganda. I also wish to thank our partners, the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda, the Uganda National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and lead agencies, UNCDF and UNDP, who are with me here today, for the joint effort in establishing a multi-stakeholder mechanism to holistically address the various aspects of private sector engagement in Uganda. I also wish to appreciate Dr. James Mwangi, Equity Bank Group Managing Director and CEO, who is also one of Africa's renowned thought leaders and philanthropists, who is expected to speak to us today. His distinguished career includes serving on the UN advisory groups on inclusive finance and global sustainability. I am confident that his presentation will ignite a critical dialogue on solutions commitment to support the implementation of the Uganda Vision 2040, the third National Development Plan, and the 2030 Agenda. We are committed to continue leveraging new partnerships to support private sector leaders to apply their creativity and innovation to solving sustainable development challenges. I look forward to our discussions on critical challenges, innovations, and opportunities for transformational partnerships in support of the SDGs. I do hope that the result of our conversations today will become best practices for Africa and beyond. I wish to thank our colleagues at the United Nations system from across the African continent and at headquarters who are joining us online today as we try to recognize indigenous solutions, promote regional collaboration, and celebrate South-South partnerships to bring the SDG pledge of leaving no one behind to life. Thank you for your attention, and let's have a great meeting today.
For those wonderful remarks. For those who don't know, Her Excellency, Madame Rosa, is our patron and our mentor for the Youth Coalition for the SDGs. She has given us a platform, and that's why we are here today. For those who are wondering, she thinks and she knows that young people are fundamental towards the acceleration of the SDGs, and that's why she always brings us on board. She acts as our mentor. When we go wrong, she corrects us, and she has taught us a lot from last year. We've benefited a lot from the coalition, and we are not the same. We keep on growing, we keep on getting better, and we keep on understanding SDGs and learning more from them. She's not the only person who has been our mentor and someone who has been guiding us in this journey. She has been working with other ladies. For example, Miss Elsie, she has been very fundamental in guiding us and being with us each and every step of the way. And the next person that I'm going to invite is Honorable Karoro Okurut, the Minister of General Duties and Focal Points, Minister of the Sustainable Development Goals, Office of the Prime Minister. She's also an amazing lady. I remember last time when we went to State House to meet the President, His Excellence, she introduced us and she said, you know what, today is the day for the young people to have an exchange with His Excellence. I'm not going to take your time. And she talked for a very few minutes and then she gave us the floor. For me, these ladies have been a wonderful inspiration. And I'm grateful that we have them on the coalition for the young people. And us being here today and discussing how we can bring forward the private sector to act as partners towards the acceleration for the SDGs makes me very excited because I've already seen what it means to work with them. And if we have the platform for the private sector to come together, I do believe that in the next 9 years, shall be in position to achieve a lot towards the achievement of the SDGs. So for now, allow me to welcome Honorable Karoro Okurut.
Thank you very much, and a very good afternoon to all present and those who are watching us and following virtually. Your Excellency, the UN Resident Coordinator in Uganda, all United Nations representatives and development partners, representatives from government ministries, departments and agencies, heads and representatives of private sector organizations, representatives from civil society organizations, the academia, special interest groups, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be present here at this year's New Generation UN Country Team meeting under the very exciting theme, Private Sector Partnerships for Sustainable Development Goals Acceleration in Uganda. On behalf of the government of Uganda, I would like to extend appreciation to the UN Country Team led by Her Excellency Rosa Malango, the UN Resident Coordinator. Thank you for hosting this forum, both physically and virtually today. I also commend the National SDG Secretariat in the Office of the Prime Minister for the vital role that the team led by Dr. Albert Byamujisha has played in laying the foundation for this meeting and all the partnerships that we expect will follow. This meeting kickstart the discussion on the Uganda private sector platform for the Sustainable Development Goals marks a very important milestone. It is the beginning of our journey to realizing our shared vision of uniting with business to transform the place we live in into a better country and a better world. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development focuses on economic growth, social inclusion, and environmental protections as interconnected dimensions of broader global development. Achieving the 169 targets for the ambitious 17 SDGs calls for broad action from diverse actors across society. Such collective efforts will go a long way and outweigh what we all could deliver as individual entities. The government of Uganda views all these actors as very key. Partnerships with the private sector are particularly very important, and why? Business-led initiatives such as research and development partnerships, knowledge sharing platforms, technology and skills transfer, and infrastructure investments have the potential to kickstart development. They also have the potential to enable productivity gains, generate better quality jobs, strengthen skills, and promote technological advances. The private sector is often an agent of change, as we have witnessed over the years in partnership with different private entities with which the government has engaged. The private sector is a critical partner with a valuable role to play in advancing development. This is a sector that is often an agent of change, whose contributions not only stimulate economic growth, but also can help implement the SDG agenda. Only by partnering with the private sector, we can successfully tackle poverty, the climate crisis, inequalities, and other long-term challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic has intensified. The road to recovery is our chance to get things right for the future and to address our country's fragilities. As such, this private sector platform has an indispensable role to play. The government therefore welcomes this dynamic engagement and awaits positive outcomes from this meeting. And to the private sector players, I say that we look forward to Uganda, where you fully play your part in building a more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable world by targeting the SDGs into your business policies, into the practices and value chains. And to the rest of us, I reiterate that if the pandemic has taught us anything, it is that our collective well-being depends on the well-being of each and every one of us, including the poorest and most vulnerable. I wish all of us very fruitful deliberations and hope that this discussion will lead to concrete steps towards the country, the world, and the future that we all want and urgently need. I thank you.
And then I will hand over to you. Thank you so much, the resident coordinator and honorable minister, for your welcoming remarks and for reiterating the commitment to the Uganda development agenda and the implementation of the SDGs. I'm very pleased now to announce the next, our first panel, in fact. We are talking today about the private sector SDG platform. But what is it in reality? What are the key features of this platform? What it is all about and how different parts of the platform will interact with each other? We will hear about it from two very knowledgeable and very key experts. And my colleague, Elsie, UNDP resident representative, will introduce them.
Well, thank you very much, Dimitri, and let me also join you to thank the resident coordinator for hosting this very important conversation. And let me stand on existing protocols and also appreciate the honorable ministers, the excellencies here, and our colleagues and private sector colleagues who are joining online. Just to build on what Dimitri said, the conversation today is about the private sector partnership. I just wanted to focus on two words before I introduce the distinguished panelists who will give us their thoughts. We're focusing on the word partnership and we're focusing on the word acceleration. And partnership for a number of reasons that we can co-create together with the private sector. We can ensure more inclusive approach to the way we do business when it comes to development. We can ensure lasting solution. And it's important that the conversation today is seen just beyond corporate social responsibility to where the private sector is part of the core business. And acceleration because we only have 9 years to the end of 2030. And the business is clear, we need to move forward with a lot of speed. And we have to do development like a sprinter. And to help us to really unpack what the platform is, I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Jose Tejeza, the Commissioner for Strategic Coordination and Implementation. He's been at the heart of a lot of the work that we do with the SDG Secretariat and the Office of the Prime Minister, as well as Mr. Gideon Badagawa, the Executive Director, Private Sector Foundation of Uganda, PSFU. Both of them have been very instrumental to our work on private sector, and Gideon in particular, I would say, has been working with us for some time now. So I'm delighted to introduce them to make their presentation on the private sector platform for the Sustainable Development Goals here in Uganda. Very warm welcome to the two of you. Thank you. We are connecting them online.
Yeah.
Gideon and Jose, are you connected? Can you hear me?
Hello?
All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, loud and clear.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Madam Rosa, and your team across there. We really want to appreciate your initiative and the fact that you have been able to assemble us this afternoon to be able to reflect on the role of the private sector in achieving Agenda 2030. We are going to make a presentation which is going to be projected, and I hope my colleague Jose can pull through the first slides, and then I'll come in later to introduce the next slides, maybe about 5 or so slides, so that you appreciate how the national platform coordinated under the Office of the Prime Minister is paying attention to supporting the private sector toward the realization of Agenda 2030. Jose?
Hear us.
Jose, are you there? Can you hear us? Gideon, I think you can hear us.
Let him go ahead.
Okay, can you?
Okay, I think I can take it away. Jose can come in as and when, because I think I'm quite familiar with the process, how it has been moving. So I am able to make the presentation. First of all, Your Excellency, once again, and Honorable Karoro Krut, Honorable Amelia, we are very thankful to you, the partnership that has been forged between the Office of the Prime Minister, the entire government, set up the UN family, but also the private sector. The partnership that is forging is pointing to one direction, that we need to realize our Agenda 2040, but also successfully being able to understand and appreciate and share the values that are espoused in the NDP3. I am really very, very happy that these partnerships are giving hope. They are giving a future to this country, especially at a time when we are almost walking away from COVID-19. We still have it here, but the indications are clear that government and all of us have been able to move towards the suppression of this challenge, and therefore inviting the private sector to participate more in the investment space across the sectors. Now, the presentation that we are going to make is about the SDG private sector platform. And I'm really very happy that the UN family chose that PSFU, on behalf of the private sector, co-chairs this platform with the Office of the Prime Minister. We are very happy because we are the actors, we are the beneficiaries. If the Agenda 2030 is going to be realized, it's certainly going to take the investment by the private sector in terms of financing, in terms of identifying and seizing opportunities across the 17 goals. And I want to agree with Madam Rosa that, and Madam Elsie, that the most important of all these goals is to strengthen partnerships, and that is goal 17. We have kept saying this over and over again. So recently, we had an engagement with the Office of the Prime Minister on how we need to bring in the private sector to participate more in the realization of these SDGs, especially to understand the targets that we are trying to move towards, but also the performance indicators as we know them. So much so that every time the private sector is doing their business, whether it's in tourism, the transport industry, energy sector, oil and gas, agriculture, whatever it is, they keep it to the back of their mind that we are moving towards the realization of these targets and the indicators that will drive us to Agenda 2030. Suffice it to say, though, that if we are going to realize the Agenda 2030 on sustainable development, we must do one thing, both in the public and the private sector. And that is, we need to change our attitudes and we need to change our mindset and look at the aspirations for this country objectively. That is both in the public and the private sector, because we have laid a target of 2040 for our vision, and the NDP3, which we are trying to revise to ensure that it aligns with the challenges that we have gone through over the last 9 to 10 months, are heavily appreciated by the private sector. So two things must happen. The first thing that is going to happen is to build the capacities of our private sector to appreciate markets, to be able to drive value chains, because this is where we are going to gain employment. This is where we are going to gain value addition and drive exports and so on. And in so doing, as we compete and make profits, we are creating shared value so that we leave no one behind. We're talking about inclusive growth. We are talking about building backward integration so that we involve the rural economy in the national development agenda. Then secondly, and especially from the side of government, we need to look at the business environment. The policies, the legislation, the regulation, licensing procedures, all these things are critically important if we are going to invite and sustain investments in this country, both local and foreign investments. So that is going to be critically important for us to do internal capacities, but also business environment. And in doing so, we need to ensure that we have institutions that can anchor the private sector in incubation, in innovation, in creativity, but also in identifying opportunities in the markets and standards and so on, and drive towards these expectations of the market. Now, the presentation that is before you, which I want to skim through very, very quickly, and can I start with the first slide? I'm sorry, I dwelt a little bit on the background, how the interplay has been, but I will try to skim through this pretty fast. So what is the SDG platform for the private sector? This is a nationally owned multi-component and multi-stakeholder mechanism to address the various aspects of private sector engagements in the SDGs. Now, SDGs, as we know them, are 17, and each of these SDGs will invite private sector participation, whether you're talking about energy and environment, gender aspects, health, education, water and sanitation. Investments largely must be from the private sector. But the private sector, as I said, will require facilitation on the conditions in the marketplace that then they can be able to do business, and these businesses are profitable. It's also a collective response of the UN and the government of Uganda to the challenge of effectively engaging the private sector in the SDG implementation. Remember, we had the Millennium Development Goals, and the experience there was not very, very good, especially for Uganda, because at that time, I think there was less realization that the private sector had a very, very strong level of participation to be able to deliver health, infrastructure, services, and so on, water and sanitation, education, skilling our people, and so on and so forth. The private sector has got a key, it's actually a key player across all these sectors. Now, the post-2015 development agenda, which has yielded our Agenda 2030 now, has made the realization that the private sector must take a center stage. And I think this is why we have coined this platform to be co-chaired by the Office of the Prime Minister, but also by the umbrella body for the private sector in this country, for which we are very grateful. This platform is also based on the following specific principles. One, that joint leadership of the government of Uganda, the private sector, the UN family, is based on strong national ownership and guidance. As I said, we can only deliver, and I think it was emphasized earlier by Madame Rosa, we can only deliver if we work in partnership, if we work together. Collectively, we need to deliver Agenda 2030, but each one of us must have a responsibility, must take on their role. If it's a facilitation role, if it's a resourcing role, if it's an investment role, each one of us has got their pie. And we need to drive this together to deliver on the targets of the SDGs. Then the other one is broad national participation, including central government, MDS, local governments, the private sector, and the academia. And later, I will talk to you about the roundtables that we have agreed upon under the platform, including the local governments, including the academia and research institutions, and so on. How the private sector needs to interplay with all these to be able to be facilitated, but also to deliver on the functions that and the roles that they have to deliver on. Then the other one is the combination of different types of support. Institutions. Are our institutions well facilitated? If you look at the Bureau of Standards, we have always cried out for increased support for the Bureau of Standards because you cannot sustain markets unless you can win on standards. The quality of the product that we are taking to the market, both here in the country, but also across the board. Now, if you look at staffing, equipment, laboratories, and so on and so forth, this is what drives the private sector. If you cannot enter the market on account of standards, then you cannot compete at all. So it's very fundamental that we build institutions, the Industrial Research Institute, the NARO, agriculture, and so on and so forth. These are institutions that work to support and promote the functioning of the private sector if we are going to realize investments and the delivery of the SDGs across the board. The last one is the practical orientation and focus on ideation, identification, piloting, and scaling up of successful SDG, responsive innovations. What has happened elsewhere? What lessons do we learn? What is it that we can copy and apply here? What are the good lessons that we need to learn and apply, and so on and so forth? Then this points to one thing again, research, market research, production research, and so on and so forth. How do we build these value chains? And as I said, it will take the government of Uganda, the different actors from the MDS, the ministries, the department, but also local government, as well as the private sector and civil society to monitor infrastructure. If we are developing infrastructure, we should not run down this infrastructure, especially if infrastructure is supporting the growth of the value chains. Next. Move to the next slide. Next slide is basically looking at how we are structured as the private sector. Just to give a snapshot of the private sector in the country. Certainly, we've been recognized as the engine of growth in the country. And indeed, we should be the engine of growth. Why growth? Because we are responsible for taxes, we are responsible for employment, we are responsible for GDP growth, and we are responsible for investment growth in the country. And therefore, the drive for exports and so on. Now, once you have this, then you have a fully functioning economy. But to be able to support the private sector, there are conditions around this growth that are required. And especially so, good policies, good licensing procedures, good regulation, and so on and so forth. These are important conditions for the private sector to thrive. If the private sector is going to lead growth and therefore deliver on the sustainable development goals, there are conditions around which will help us propel the economy and grow the tax base and be able to draw increasing revenues for further growth. However, NDP has recognized capacity challenges for the private sector, and we all understand that the private sector, especially on skills, the productivity has been quite low. Productivity across the board, and at PSF, I will tell you, Your Excellencies and colleagues, at PSF we are structured now around 12 sectors. Government has got about 16 sectors. We have structured ourselves as private sector in this country, around 12 sectors. And these 12 sectors actually span the sustainable development goal, the 17 sustainable development goals. The only sectors that we don't have in the private sector, as you can imagine, are defense, justice, law and order sector, and probably accountability and things like that. But the rest of the other sectors, agriculture, manufacturing, industry, trade and commerce, the creative artists, and so on and so forth, are actually mirrored with the ministries and the sector working groups in government. And I think this is where the fortune is that we can be able to do public-private dialogue and come up with policies that can propel growth in the private sector in that way. So the structuring within the PSF has occasioned the strengthening of the PPP, public-private partnerships in the country through dialogue and engagement in advocacy, and therefore be able to influence public policy in a manner that the private sector can be able to participate more in the national economic growth. There are also issues to do with inadequate strategic and sustainable government investments and partnerships with the private sector in key growth areas. Now, this is where we look to the National Development Plan again. We have more than 35 projects under the National Development Plan, in energy, in oil and gas, in agriculture, irrigation, and so on and so forth. The question is, how do we align these very, very vast projects, important projects for the country that we have carved out? How do we align them with the conditioning of the SDG platform, the Agenda 2030? Who is participating in the delivery of these projects and how? What capacities do we have? Who do we train and in what areas? What are the competencies that are around it? And so on and so forth. Because until we are able to answer those questions, it might be difficult for government and the private sector to deliver on what we are looking at. Next. So the next one is really just looking at the AAA, the Addis Ababa Agenda Action, which was a coining of 2015 as a blueprint for financing SDGs. Now, remember the discussion we had, I think this was in 2016, where we were looking at how can the private sector be invited to participate in financing of the SDGs. And I think we all agreed that the private sector has got a strong hand in the delivery of these SDGs through investment and financing. That's why one of the roundtables, actually, when I come to present these roundtables, we'll be speaking to financing. Okay, and I think this is one of the reasons that the Uganda Bankers Association is part of us. So we want to engage as partners in the development process, and this is what the focus of that action agenda was. We want to look at. Hello?
Yes, sorry to interrupt you. Can you please wrap up in the next 5 minutes?
Okay, sure. So we are looking at engaging as partners in the development process. We are looking at investing in areas that are critical for sustainable development. So prioritization, planning, and budgeting is going to be key for us as a country if we are going to support the growth and delivery on SDGs. And then shifting to more sustainable consumption and production patterns. This is where we're talking about environment, because the private sector is going to be responsible for extracting the natural resources in agriculture, in oil and gas, and so on and so forth, minerals and so on. How sustainably can we do this? So there's a lot of capacity that is required. There's a lot of understanding, a lot of research that is required. And this is going to be mirrored against very successful stories that have happened elsewhere. Next. So these are basically the objectives. The objective, as I said in the last slide, basically is to strengthen the partnership if we are going to realize. And here you are looking at development partners, UN agencies, we are looking at local government and other NGOs, and especially the research institutes. We have the Industrial Research Institute, we have the Economic Policy Research Center, especially for policy engagements and so on. And we need to bring all these in perspective so that they, as private sector, we are able to benefit from this kind of research to build efficiency across the board. Next. I think we can move. I wanted to go to the chart, which is speaking to, this is the one, the functionality of the platform. How are we going to do what we want to do? We have sat down with the Secretariat at the Office of the Prime Minister and agreed on a number of roundtables through which we are going to do dialogue, consultation, discussions, and so on. And the support institutions, and in there, you will find that we have various institutions that are going to be supporting and helping the private sector to establish and grow, including those that are going to support on incubation, that are going to support on market research and policy and so on and so forth. Next one. So the next one, on the very left, we have roundtable 1, roundtable 2, roundtable 3, up to roundtable 5. And there are other roundtables that we can coin along the way. But the ones that are here, the first one is with the national authorities. So you can see private sector and the national authorities. National authorities, we are basically looking at the MDAs, ministries, departments of governments, and agencies of government that work to support and promote the private sector on policy, on research, and so on and so forth. And the second one is on local government. This is where things are happening. Most of the time we forget that most of our people, the services are delivered at the local government level. So service delivery, education, health infrastructure, road infrastructure, and so on, especially community access roads that can link farmers to the market. How efficient is this kind of transportation and so on? So there is a lot that is required at the local government. So as private sector, we thought it fit that we need to do a round table with the Uganda local government authorities. I think they have an association which brings together the municipalities, the cities, and so on and so forth. And now that we have cities that have been established, we need to talk more to these cities and understand, especially the side of energy and environment. How much can we sustain investments in these areas and so on? So we are going to have that roundtable. The third roundtable is the UN family. Already we are doing a lot of work with the UN family on gender, on environment, with the Ministry of Water and Environment. We are doing quite a lot of programs and projects with them already, in line with SDG 5 on gender equality, SDG 11 on sustainable cities, SDG 13 on the environment, and so on and so forth. There are quite a number of things that we are doing with the UN family already. And then we also talking about the financial sector. How do we finance investments across the board?
And they are really over time. So if you can please wrap it up and finish.
Okay. So those are the 5 roundtables that we have, and these are going to be backstopped by the Economic Policy Research Center, as well as some of the institutions in the government, like the Uganda Development Bank, the financing institution, as well as the Uganda Development Corporation, through which we can do PPP investments. Next. Next, please. Okay, so the implementation here, we are just talking about how we are going to be meeting, how we are going to be doing our consultative meetings and dialogue platforms, the discussions and so on and so forth. So we're talking about maybe every 3 months, we can have a meeting, but before these meetings, there are sub-meetings. If you look at, for instance, areas of agriculture, there are sub-platforms that may be required in terms of, value chains and so on. If you look at local governments, we may want to address areas that talk to cities more than the other, LOC3 outfits and so on and so forth. So we are going to be engaging every so often before we have these quarterly meetings with the respective roundtables. So those are just examples of the stakeholder subgroups, and as I said, authorities and so on and so forth. Last one. Do we still have an additional one? Okay, great.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I promise that this presentation will be sent across so that you appreciate more how we have structured ourselves with the Secretariat at the OPM and how we plan to engage the private sector to participate more in the delivery of the SDG agenda. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Gideon, and I would like to thank you and to thank, of course, the OPM for the presentation and for this foresightedness, because the platform is not just a meeting place. It has facilities that underlie and facilitate actual contributions and investments of businesses into SDG-linked initiatives. And we are talking about the Knowledge Center and Innovation Lab, which should provide overall knowledge platform for businesses to be able to identify the business opportunities that are linked to SDGs. We are talking about the technical assistance, business development services facility, which will help the businesses to design actual business models, to adjust their processes and products to be SDG responsive. And last but not least, and this is where financial institutions, including UDB, come, is the Challenge Fund that would offer a revolving fund to de-risk SDG-linked solutions. So we are going to talk about these various aspects and elements of the platform in the next part of our meeting, and we have some resource persons joining us online, and I would like to request Linda to introduce the resource persons.
For those of us who are online, I would love to encourage you to put in your text in the chat so that you can be in position to review them, and you can also participate through the chat. And then also, I would like to introduce the specialists who are going to be part of our platform today. I would like to recognize Mr. Wilbrod Owor, who is the Executive Secretary of the Uganda Bankers Association, and our own Ms. Immaculate Akelo, the founder and CEO of Generation Engage Network. She will be with us shortly. However, you can begin on with the final discussion. My first question would go to you, Mr. Gideon, to the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda. You have coordinated the private sector for some time right now. I have two major questions for you. The first one is, what's your take on the need for dedicated coordination platform? And then the second question is, what's your plan?
Sorry, what's that question again? Sorry, I can't hear that.
Okay, what's your take on the need for a dedicated platform, for a dedicated coordinated platform, just like a private sector foundation, having a platform with people who are organized towards the same cause? And then the second one is, what's the plan of your platform following this meeting after what we have discussed right now and what you have presented to us a few minutes ago? What's your plan? How are you going to participate towards the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals? And for our members who are online, the Sustainable Development Goals, for those who don't understand them, are basically how can we develop while considering the future generations ahead? How do we ensure that development is holistic so that we consider the environment, the social, and also the economic growth of the country? So feel free to always put in your comments. Mr. Gideon, you can now respond to the question.
Okay, very quickly. If we are going to deliver, if we are going to succeed as businesses and deliver on the assignment that we have on the delivery of the SDGs, we must get organized. We must be well and properly coordinated as a private sector. This is part of the reason we are not sustaining markets. So the reason for PSF is to organize the private sector. Once the private sector is well organized, then we can be able to help them reach out and make market entry. Markets are an opportunity for the private sector, but we can only seize this opportunity if we get organized. The PSFU, the membership of the Private Sector Foundation, which is the umbrella body for the business community in this country, are actually business associations. And we encourage as much as possible for the private sector actors to enjoin as long as they are within the same sector. If it's agriculture, if it's tourism, if it's manufacturing, so that they can be able to reflect on common challenges and understand what the market is requiring from them. So it's very important to organize the private sector, including producer groups, because it's not going to be possible for these producer groups to enter markets unless they understand standards, unless they are able to aggregate volumes and enter these markets. So organization is very important for us. That is why the private sector is premised, as I said earlier, on sectors. And the way we have structured ourselves is such that the leaders of these sectors become the board members, the strategic leaders of the private sector. So you have a leader in agriculture, a leader in oil and gas, a leader in tourism, manufacturing, and so on and so on. There are 12 sectors so that we can organize these sectors. Some of the sectors actually have more than 40 associations. So this is where we are, and that is the role of the private sector.
Plans for the platform following this meeting to engage them in sustainability. What's your plan?
Did I hear that? No.
No, the question is, what's your plan as the Private Sector Foundation following this meeting? How are you going to be in position to implement what you've been talking about?
Now, we are already implementing. We are not going to start implementing. We are already implementing the delivery of Agenda 2030. How? We are engaging in policy dialogue with the government to create a business environment where our businesses will be more productive, will be more profitable, will compete better, will pay taxes and broaden the tax base. That is one. So we are engaging in policy dialogue. That is a fundamental outcome of this process. So when we talk about round tables, consultative meetings, and so on, we want to understand and collectively own and determine the future of this country. We are participating already in the structuring or restructuring of the National Development Plan 3, because from the stimulus package that we have agreed with government after COVID struck, we understood and agreed that the priorities must be reshaped, planning must grow a little bit better than it was earlier, so that we begin to put our meager resources where wealth can be created, opportunities for our people can be created, especially in the rural economy, in agriculture, so that the youth can be fixed in the various value chains. Actually, at the PSFU, we are already working with various partners, including the MasterCard. MasterCard, there is a very important program on lead farm structures, which is linking farmers to markets, organizing producer groups, working with households and farms at the lower levels, and working with key companies that understand markets, understand market signals, and be able to break this down through backward integration to the producer groups and so on. So we are actively working to involve, especially the young people, in the value chains, in agriculture, in tourism, in the construction industry, and so on and so forth. So we are already implementing. It's not that we are going to do it after this meeting. I thank you.
Elsie.
All right, so we are going to have Dimitri take us on for the next question.
Thank you so much. I would like to recognize colleagues who are online with us. We have Mr. Olajobi Makinwa, Chief Intergovernmental Relations and Africa, representing the UN Global Compact. I would also like to welcome my friend Arif Neki, Senior Advisor at the RC office in Kenya, who is the UN Strategic Partnerships Coordinator and also the brain behind the SDG platform in Kenya. Colleagues, can you please share your views very briefly, because we are already over time, but can you please share your views and mention one or two best practices that would allow us to make the SDG platform a success? Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Makinwa.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol. I stand upon all the other protocols established this morning. It's a great pleasure to speak with you today from New York. The UN Global Compact believes that there is great potential for us to collaborate more closely with the UN family and strengthen the collaboration with the private sector and other key stakeholders in order to achieve much stronger results in the implementations of the SDGs. So we will stand with you, and from what I've heard this morning, it's really wonderful how the private sector will be working with the government and with the United Nations in Uganda. The Global Compact, we are a platform that brings companies together. Ourselves, we are a collective. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Pardon? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, we are a collective action initiative ourselves, working with companies and other stakeholders to deliver on the SDGs. We have so many examples all over the world where our companies are collaborating with governments to deliver on the SDGs. And as we have heard this morning, there's no way out for us to. And that's what why Mr. Kofi Annan, the late Mr. Kofi Annan, the former SDG, established the Global Compact a few years ago to ensure that we bring a human face to the global agenda. So it's important for us to work together. And like I said, we have so many examples, but because I can see you, there is no time, we can share with you examples later of successes, you know. But what do we see as success? It is the fact that if the private sector can work with government to bring people out of poverty, as we have heard today in Uganda, the number of jobs that the private sector, the number of people that the private sector employs in Uganda, it is crucial, and therefore it is important for us to continue to engage with the private sector. So on this note, let me just stop here to just deliver the message that the Global Compact is ready to work with you to deliver on the SDGs. We are always ready to work with you and the private sector in Uganda and the government of Uganda, as well as the UN in Uganda. Thank you very much indeed for this. I believe you are muted.
Hello, can you? Okay. Arif, if in the next couple of minutes you can share the key experiences from your platform and give us your wise advice about what we can do better than yourselves.
Thank you very much, Dimitri. I hope you can hear me from Nairobi. For us, sorry, can you hear me? You're muted. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I think you are muted.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. So congratulations to all
Yes,
of you.
we can.
Thank you. Congratulations to all from all of us in Kenya. I am at the RCO's office and coordinate the SDG platform in Kenya since inception. So it's been great to share with colleagues in Uganda. I think there are about 6 concrete things that I think have been very important for us in our experience over the last 3 years, where the platform has been able to unlock investment pipelines of approximately $200 million so far. One has been the creation of a multi-partner trust fund. This is a pool of funding that can come together to sustain the platform and its activities using the multi-partner trust fund architecture that's available through UNDP in New York. The second one is to create strategic co-created platforms around sectors, such as the agriculture sector network of Kenya that we co-created with private sector alliances, the finance, trade and investment platform, etc. The third one is to create a blended finance network of networks, to bring in the bankers associations, venture philanthropy, private equity, pensions, philanthropy, angel investors and cooperatives. These are the people that are looking for deal share and looking for bankable propositions to invest both equity and debt. The fourth one is to create concrete investment pipelines that can be catalyzed on the ground that allow for SDG linked investments to be supported through the UN platform and the government platform as an ecosystem support. Many good projects don't get the light of the day because they don't get the ecosystem support. So this platform can be a bit of a de-risker simply in terms of its moral authority, its credibility, and the people that sit on its governance and management. Fifth one is to say that we need to be thinking also of the innovative financing instruments that one can develop that allow crowding in of different types of private capital to complement public capital. In Kenya, for example, we are supporting a $30 million development impact bond, which is the world's first bond for adolescent sexual reproductive health, with a number of partners, the UK, CIF, UNFPA, the H6, etc. We have a $100 million primary healthcare fund we are supporting, which is for Africa, with a whole range of private sector, foundation, and other partners globally. And the last point I'd like to say is that it's been wonderful to make sure that our work is also helps the one UN character of the platform, bringing in all of the agencies, partners, the intellectual firepower of all the UN agencies together, so we can actually draw this as a glue that brings private sector engagements together across the UN system. Both working with both national and devolved governments has also been extremely important. Our role becomes that of a neutral broker, where we will be quite open to give advice to government on the types of investments that we think are good for the country and remain demand-driven and not supply-driven. I will stop there, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. And congratulations once again to the entire team in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abi, for these inspiring examples. We hope to continue to cooperate across the border with you and share the experiences as we move forward. I would like now to request the founder and CEO of Generation Engage Network. I hope we have him. Yes. So you are young and you own your business, and you are already making a positive contribution to SDG implementation in Uganda. So congratulations on this. If you can, in the next couple of minutes, share with us your experiences of how, as a young entrepreneur, you are contributing to SDG implementation, and what else needs to be done to fully realize your potential. And I think Gideon, speaking before, mentioned 2 critical areas, which are capacity and the policy framework. So over to you.
Hello, Right, thank you so much. My name is Immaculate Akelo, and I'm the team leader at Generation Engage Network. At Generation Engage Network, we believe that every young person is unique, and it is our responsibility to help them become the best possible version of themselves. We particularly champion Goal 13, which is climate action, and we work with the young women and the women in northern Uganda, in Otuke district. First of all, climate action is something that is very unique, and everyday government, but also people in the communities have to make a choice whether to work towards achieving Goal 13 or to work towards survival. And that's the life of every woman in Otuke. Every morning she has to wake up and make those decisions. That means that they keep cutting down trees to meet their small needs like school fees, healthcare, food, and all other necessities. So as Generation Engage Network, we designed a social enterprise model that is targeted towards saving the shea nut tree. The shea nut tree is a special tree that grows in northern Uganda. And so we work with these women. We have them in groups of 3, with about 150 women in total. They collect the shea nuts every month of June, every year. And after eating the fruits, we encourage them to keep the seeds. Now we work with them in 2 ways. Some of them, we buy the seeds from them and process shea butter. Others already have a manual machine where they process the butter. So we buy the butter from them. For every product that we sell, 10% of that money goes towards planting more trees. So we have in total now planted 500 trees in different parts of the country, using that 10%. And we have amazing people, some of which are members of the coalition that has bought the products from us, but also other Ugandans that believe in our cause. In this way, we believe that we'll be encouraging these women to stop cutting down the shea nut tree, use the 10% of every sale to plant more trees, but above all, the common man down there now understands that beyond just charcoal and timber, trees can actually provide them with much more economic value. And that's the module that we use in combating climate change. In your other question, you asked what needs to be done. I think that as a network, we still have challenges with capacity building. Much of the things that we do, we base on experiences with the local community. And so usually, like every other young person, which I want to congratulate Mama Rosa for, we make a lot of mistakes. And so we need more platforms where we can learn and unlearn those mistakes in this business. The other thing that I think we need is the business environment is a little hostile for young people, especially when we talk about taxes, when we talk about access to financial services, especially in banks. The interest rate, and again I re-echo, is very high for a young person. The collateral is very high for a young person. And so for us as a network, we are asking, one, for support, especially in terms of financial support. But also above all, I think that beyond financial support is space to do the business. We currently co-press our butter in Lira with mostly rudimentary methods. But I think if we had a better kind of machinery, modern machinery, to press this butter, we will be able to upscale our production. And I can tell you that the shea butter is much more, I think, appreciated in the export markets than in the national market in Uganda. So usually people reach out and say, oh, can I get your product in South Africa? Can I get your product in Kenya? But beyond that, the demand sometimes is overwhelming. And yet we don't have the resources to produce in large scale. We believe that if we have a platform where we can produce in large scale, we will work at using a community model where the women in northern Uganda have a say on how the business is run. They also will be having a percentage that goes towards economically empowering them, but also there must be a specific percentage that goes towards teaching them more about the environment and why they need to preserve more trees, but also planting those trees with them. So that is the module that we believe could help in increasing the forest cover in northern Uganda, but also enabling that every woman in northern Uganda actually starts believing that there is more that the trees can give them beyond charcoal and timber. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful example of an enterprise where social and economic objectives go together, and they come together quite nicely for the achievement of the SDGs. And obviously, the issue of finance crops up in all our discussions. Our colleague from Kenya has just mentioned how instrumental the Kenyan Bankers Association was in the establishment and operation of the SDG platform. So my question is to representatives of the Uganda Bankers Association. I hope they are together with us online. As you heard, the one of the elements of the private sector SDG platform is a funding facility that is designed for structuring, de-risking, and financing of SDG-linked initiatives. So what is your opinion about that? And do you see the entry points and opportunities for the for Ugandan financial institutions in such an initiative? Over to you, colleagues.
The network is a bit poor. I hope I didn't hear everything, but let me start by thanking UNDP and the entire team, Your Excellency, the UNDP representative, and the entire team that has put this together. And I will also recognize all the protocol that has been laid out before. I think, although I didn't hear the question, I just want to make a general comment that this is a very good initiative. And what else can the financial banking sector do? This initiative is good, and those things that you spoke to, that de-risk financing of investments at whatever level, are very welcome initiatives because they widen, they increase, they expand the appetite of financial institutions in availing finance, either by way of credit or other forms of guarantees for access to finance. The other way is obviously to leverage on ICT and digital financial services to extend reach. And the previous speaker has just spoken very well, so that even the disadvantaged opportunity is tapped from wherever it is. The third one, which your colleague Arif Neke spoke very well about, in fact, he made my work easy, is the blended finance, the innovating financing models beyond the traditional bank lending, so that the combination of financing types can then support these initiatives across. And I think one of the takeaways from this particular session will be to benchmark with the many things that Arif Neke in UN Kenya said of how they brought this in the market, especially from bank lending. There are numerous opportunities. These opportunities need to be categorized. There are those that bring returns quickly, and we have seen even in the post-COVID ICT, processing, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals can turn around cash quickly. Some of the other longer ones, like services sector in education or hospitality, take slightly longer, and as a result, they require slightly different interventions. So I think I am glad that this has been initiated, As an industry, we are happy to support it. I would like us to benchmark with you in Kenya and get this going to support the process. There are also specific sectors that once you intervene in, they have a multiplier effect behind that support another a whole big value chain, and this brings the quick development that we are looking for. So once again, I'm very grateful and I'm happy and looking forward to share more and participate in this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And likewise, we look forward to working with you. And many thanks to our presenters and to our resource persons online. This has been a very lively and very substantive discussion. So thank you so much. And over to my sister Elsie for the next panel.
Well, thank you very much, Dimitri. And for our brother from Kenya, I presume you wanted to say the United Nations resident coordinator. So I just wanted to put that into perspective. But Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished private sector participants, let me simply say, ladies and gentlemen, we've just had a very spirited conversation and discussion on the role of the private sector in supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. We've heard from private sector actors on the need for partnership, why it's important for the SDGs, Vision 2040, NDP3 implementation, and acceleration towards the Uganda that we want. The conversation goes on, and now we are in the panel 2 of the conversation. And this time around, we're going to be focusing on very interesting issues around trade, around industry, around cooperatives, around how, just listening to Immaculate on the shared conversation, saying that, look, we are overwhelmed with a lot of requests, we can't meet it. So we're talking about trade and how does a private sector person like her benefit from support? And to lead us in this conversation this afternoon is a very distinguished woman that I respect, and her leadership is something else. And she's been at the forefront of the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperative. And to this afternoon, I just wanted, it's my honor and privilege to welcome Honorable Amelia Chambade to address us, and she'll be speaking on how the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperative is positioning to support private sector, including those in the banking sector, agricultural sector, mining, tourism, and others that we've spoken about, to effectively contribute to the implementation of the SDGs, NDP3, and of course, Vision 2040. So, Honorable Amelia Chambade, you have the floor now to make your statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, my best friends, Rosa Malango and Elsie Altafua. I'd like to thank you very much for organizing this forum and for inviting me to participate in this important theme, private sector partnerships for Sustainable Development Goals, acceleration in Uganda. Please allow me to remove the mask. I'm alone here, so I'm observing.
Feel free, please.
Yes. We all know very well that the private sector is a critical agent for development. From the mid-1980s, Uganda has followed the private sector-led development path and has supported the private sector through establishing certain government agencies like Uganda Investment Authority, Uganda Revenue Authority, Uganda Development Corporation, Bureau of Standards, Exports Promotions Board, Registration Bureau, URI, and many others. And these agencies work in close collaboration with strategic private sector bodies like UMA, like Private Sector Foundation, Uganda Small Scale Industries, Uganda Small Scale Industries Association, UWIL, among others. So the regulatory framework governing the private sector has been developed, all the frameworks have been developed in consultation with the private sector. And government has also established Uganda Development Corporation to undertake strategic and capital-intensive investments in partnership with the private sector. And they have already put in place and supported various groups or industries, for example, like Tiak Sugar, Chigeze Highland Tea, Soroti Food Factory, Luero Food Factory, Lake Catre Cement Plant in Moroto, among others. Scaling is key, and technical institutions have sprung up. We have Management Training Advisory Center, which has rolled out to regions to be able to train the youth that are up countries through short courses. But there are also innovation funds in different organizations like ICT and others. But it's important to note that private sector development is among the key programs highlighted in the third National Development Plan, which attests to the fact that government recognizes the role of the private sector as a key driver for economic growth. Government has created a conducive environment that has attracted financial institutions totaling to 25 commercial banks, including Equity Bank, Equity Bank Uganda Limited. The government has also collaborated with banks to extend credit facilities through medium, small, and micro enterprises. Currently, part of the COVID-19 relief package to business is being channeled through Uganda Development Bank. The private sector should also take advantage of the regional and continental markets that have been negotiated by government in order to create strategic trade opportunities. And Your Excellencies, as government in particular, we are committed to supporting the private sector. But I'd like to mention some areas or school for thought to the UN stakeholders, to the private sector, but also I would like to raise it as a matter of concern that as we sit here in our virtual discussions, as we sit in boardrooms at prime members of the private sector, what do we think about the rural communities, the rural youth, the demographic dividend that we want to bring on board into private sector management? So I'd like for us to focus on skilling youth, but rolling out also to rural communities. Infrastructure development is also key. Government has engaged in that, but we need to think of other forms of energy. Affordable and accessible credit by banks is key, but how do they access the rural communities? Private sector should link up with the academia. UN families' role to focus on training and skilling, especially for the youth. So I'd like to thank Your Excellencies and the UN resident coordinators that for having played a role in promoting SDGs in different spheres of our economy, not only here, not only the private sector, health, environment, and all those. I treasure this partnership with the Equity Bank, and the general private sector will definitely go a long way in supporting MSMEs. Equity Bank is renowned for its affordable and accessible services to the private sector. I'm therefore privileged to be here with a representative of the Equity Bank, and I look forward to listening to his presentation. I thank you so much for having me, but I've left those issues as school of thought for us, especially for the demographic dividend of the youth who are agitating for economic support. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Amelia Tambade. It's always a pleasure to listen to you, and you always have very insightful reflections You know, she shared a lot, the Honorable Minister shared a lot about the private sector pathway that the government has undertaken. She emphasized a lot on training, capacity building, skilling, and also importantly, touching the rural youth. And that's where we have most of our population. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that she said in the interest of time, but Honorable Minister, it's interesting that on my phone, I'm getting a lot of questions to you already. And I know we have to take on Mr. Mwangi, but maybe if I may, there's a question that came, and I thought I'll just read that to you to see if you have maybe a minute or two reflection on that. And the question is, the question for Honorable Minister is regarding the African Free Continental Trade Area and the intra-African goods trade. Uganda, like many other African countries such as Kenya, South Africa, and Morocco, has pre-shipment verification of conformity programs, whereby all shipments subject to this program must obtain a certificate of conformity prior to shipment, mandatory for customs clearance. This type of program ensures product quality, health, and safety for the end user. The UNCT envisages, among other things, reduction of trade barriers on the basis of the less favored nation and trade facilitation measures on the basis of best practices in customs. In this sense, the question is, what do you think is the impact of the AFCTA? The AFCTA is going to have on this type of verification of conformity program and intra-Africa goods trade? I think it's a very loaded question. I'm not sure whether we can answer that, but just in case you have to reflect, otherwise we can pack it to the end and then you can reflect on it and we can come back to you later on.
Okay.
We can listen to her now.
Sorry, we can listen to you now if you wanted to speak to her.
Yes, we have come up with a national accreditation assessment, conformity assessment services bill. And this will do away with the PIVOC services that we have had in the country. So this bill will create a national accreditation assessment and conformity services platform or body, which will be able to oversee all the players in the standards and quality assessment. So now that we have this framework, it will create a body which will be able to oversee all standard bodies, for example, UNBS, National Drug Authority, and all those. So they'll be able to monitor all the goods that are coming in and that are going out. So we'll be able to do away with the PIVOC arrangement because that one has been a bit of a barrier. So how will the ordinary exporter or trader benefit from this? With this accreditation system, we'll be able to allow the private sector to establish also their bodies, standard bodies, so that we don't just have a monopoly of UNBS, but all these other standard bodies will be able to avail services to all the players or the exporters in order to do away with a monopoly. And this accreditation body will have different technical units that will be dealing with specific goods. For example, if you are importing ICT goods, that team will be able to know whether you are importing the right goods or exporting the right goods. It's a long thing. Maybe I'll get the contact of that person and I'll be able to send him more information. And I'll be talking to the media more about this to sensitize them about this bill that has come through Parliament.
Thank you, Honorable Chambade, and thank you for the insights. Again, there's a lot of appetite on trade issues, and I think we should be engaging with you more often to unpack some of these things, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Excellencies, we are moving ahead with the program, and we will be welcoming to make a presentation to us a man that is sought after globally and in Africa, And I have read so much about him, but I'm yet to set eyes on him. So I'm glad that we're connecting today with him. And I want to thank the RC for bringing the Equity family with us. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to welcome Dr. James Mwangi, CBS, Group Managing Director and CEO, Equity Group Holdings, PLC, Executive Chairman, Equity Group Foundation. Dr. James Mwangi is one of Africa's most renowned thought leaders, a disruptive entrepreneur and philanthropist. As a champion of social economic transformation, James believes that individuals and societies have the potential to solve their socio-economic challenges if they are given the opportunity and access to resources. And he's done so much for the world and for the region. So Dr. Mwangi will make a presentation on its experience of the Equity Bank with the UN in the region and new partnership opportunities in Uganda. He will speak around the mission, the purpose, achievements, opportunities, and risks for partnerships in Uganda and East Africa. Dr. Mwangi, welcome, and we're very happy to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really honored and privileged to be asked to play a role here. The UN Resident Coordinator, Madam Losa, Honorable Karoro, Good Minister of General Duties, Honorable Minister Maria, Minister of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, the moderators who have been facilitating the conversation since we began, my colleagues from the private sector. This forum for me speaks a lot because it gives me an opportunity in the East African region to champion what I've been as part of the select team that is proposing the private sector to adopt purpose first so that we can build the world better after COVID. So it couldn't have come at a better time. And also when we are celebrating Equity's win of the Oslo Business for Peace Award. Having said that, the essence of business really must be redefined. And it can only be redefined if we change our philosophies, our beliefs and ethos. And on the screen, I'm sharing with you the essence of Equity for the last 30 years, what has driven it to be where we are. And so as we move on, we'll see the impact beliefs, ethos, and philosophies can have in terms of a business being people-centered, and at the same time being integrated with the communities that host the business. So our philosophy as a bank is to champion that cause of transformation of lives. We know we are in Africa, and we know that transformation of lives, honor and dignity is essential and prerequisite for any transformation of the African continent. And that the best way to do it is then to empower the private sector to create opportunities as it sits well. And those opportunities can be employment for our young people, and it can be opportunities for markets, for products produced by our people. And for us to be able to do that, then we have developed a twin engine, private sector enterprise. One that is economic and scales the financing of the private sector so that it creates opportunity for our people. It expands opportunities in terms of markets. At the same time, connecting people at the bottom of the pyramid with those opportunities and enabling them to take advantage of that of those opportunities through capacity building and giving them the tools that will enable them to be engaged in economic activities. But remembering that you can't do it alone. This is an era of partnerships. So we champion that cause to all like-minded people. And I'm really glad that the UN has really mobilized and used its convening power to bring us together so that we can do it together. And basically, the private sector is then redefining its participation and introducing corporate philanthropy. Private sector have a lot of investments that can be made to do good. that dead infrastructure already invested in can be turned into tools of doing good in society. And that is what equity has done, so that the foundation, the social engine, doesn't have cost structure. The second aspect is that the private sector is at the center of the real economy. We see the private sector being either in enterprises, energy, in environment. It is in the social protection space, providing all the needs. It is in health, it's in education, it's in food, nutrition, and agriculture, and it's the driver. It's the core of the private sector is the entrepreneurship. So essentially, this becomes a very good tool of transmitting UN and development agencies' intention, particularly in the sustainable development goals, to the people. And at the same time, the policy of government then can enhance this, and the transmission engine be the private sector. If you look at the spread of equity, we see that it leaves nobody behind. It banks the very rich in our society, it banks the corporate, the blue chip companies, but at the same time, it banks those benefiting from social payments. The refugees in our camps are not left behind. And you can see the pyramid of equity customer base is widest at the bottom, and 87% of our customers are either at the individual level or at a micro enterprises level. So it's an integrated approach. The second aspect is to give the community a role to play. And we shall see the concentration of equity infrastructure. Allow the community to own the infrastructure. And that is what equity has become famous for worldwide. The agents of equity, which are now almost 100,000, do the services at the community level. And so it takes financial services to the last mile. But more importantly, it creates a business model for that 100,000 agents who leverage on it. The second one is use of technology. And the technology we are talking about is the mobile phone, mobile banking, making it possible for all to have access. The mobile phone becomes the nearest branch a customer has and can do all the services in the bank. So essentially, there is no time to go to the bank. There is no time that you can't do banking, and there is no distance to travel to go to the bank. You are doing the bank on your phone, and you can borrow at 5. And then more importantly is to ensure the model connects business with the community. The bank funds the businesses to create opportunities as they seek wealth, but the community itself is linked to the businesses. And this is what we call a holistic approach to doing business, an ecosystem that ensures the community benefits from the actions, the practices, and the business of the private sector. We're privileged to be given a chance to serve in Uganda, because Uganda is surrounded or is in the middle of the entire region that we serve. And consequently, we can create bigger opportunities than the economy of Uganda can do through cross-border trade, enabling Uganda to tap the opportunities in South Sudan, DRC, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, because of its location. And in the process, we can facilitate the actualization and realization of the African continental free trade programs by creating those opportunities for our young people. So we see Uganda as a very good area of collaborating with government, with the UN agencies and other development partners. And these are the principles we have been working on. The principle is that all programs must be scalable and sustainable. We can't have programs that are 3 years and then come to an end, because then we reverse all the gains we have made. The bank has made it possible that it will be involved directly and build all the programs in the DNA of the group business model so that they become sustainable and embedded long after the collaboration, the impact remains. And then, of course, is the principles of execution, leveraging on the group's infrastructure to reduce the cost of execution. So there is no cost of administration because you are using the staff that are paid already by the group. You are leveraging on the branches to have the operations. And more importantly, you are using the brand and capabilities of the group on the ground. And then is remaining within the capacity of the bank. The foundations must remain within the capacity to ensure no failure. But more importantly is the partnership and the principles of partnership. We're saying the UN agencies and the government doesn't have to be a permanent partner. It can seed programs. And after they have become sustainable, then they become part and parcel of our offering in alleviating the challenges that the low-income people go through. And then the more important one is the partnership must be also embedded in the communities. The staff, the customers, the public, and all stakeholders must be involved so that they become the custodians and the watchdog of these programs. It can't be done for them. We have talked about the areas that are centered to the real economy that apprise people, the six of them. But let me touch on education. And we can see how we have partners with the government. We started a scholarship program with MasterCard Foundation. And after doing 18,000 scholarships, the Kenya government came and said, this is the best program we have ever seen in this country. Can we double? And they gave us another 18,000 scholarships. So far, we are up to 26,000, but we have 10,000 scholarships to give this year, reaching 36,000. So that is the collaboration we are talking about. And we can see all the partners who have been done there. Each of them don't need to set its own infrastructure. One infrastructure is enough for all of us if we are aligned. And I guess the biggest responsibility the UN can do is to be the mobilizer of all the partners, aligning them, and then we jointly execute programs. If we look at health, we have partners with USAID and Kenya government, and we have set ourselves to set 1,000 clinics in Kenya, private sector driven, that will deliver more patients visits than the public sector program. And then this is more of the universal health because it's aligned with the government, it's partnership with the government, and it creates millions of jobs for young people in tertiary level of education. If we look at food and agriculture, and I'm really glad that all the UN agencies that are involved in agriculture, we work with them together with the government. And I'm glad here we have worked with the government of Uganda to cover almost 40,000 farmers, 75,000 farmers in Uganda. And that ability to pool resources together then scales the program as we have seen earlier. And we can do that beyond food and agriculture, and we go to energy and environment. And I'm really glad that this is the most sustainable program because it's cost saving to communities. So the community spreads the cost it's already incurring to move to the next stage and reduce their costs, particularly to access to water, to access to energy, and protection and preservation of our forests. I'm glad this week the Kenya government has agreed that we fund all the schools in the country to move away from wood fuel for cooking in schools. And we put LPG plants for all the schools, and we spread that cost over a period of 5 years. So that level of programs can be done. Enterprise development to us is the most scalable one, because essentially here is the power of the private sector. We push clean oxygen to really powering the private sector to create opportunities, either through jobs or markets for our produce and goods. And this can really accelerate at this time because of the African Continental Free Trade Area. It means consuming the produce that we are working together. But you can see the training requires certification by people like IRO. It requires our flagship product, a women product called Fanikisha, is a partnership between UNDP and Equity Bank, and then strengthened by UN Women. So that level of partnership is essential, and the government then creates the policies for the private sector to drive. The social payments, we have one single card that has 26 wallets. So it doesn't matter which agent is paying the social, we use just one single card. And at the same time, we are using an account. And by giving the account to all these 3.3 million beneficiaries, you give them honor and dignity in the sense that you don't expose their need. You're not making them line up outside the administrator's office. They work with dignity and honor with their heads up as they go to the bank without knowing where the money is coming from. So that is, social protection is an area that is so easy to collaborate. And we can see all the partners who are in social protection, and they're using one single card within the group. And that speaks of the collaboration. I will jump one on this slide, and the next one that shows how much these programs have been celebrated, and then answer the question of what really we could recommend. And basically what we could really recommend for Uganda is that we have a branch network and an agency that completely overlaps with the population in Uganda. So it becomes very easy. The dot represents our infrastructure. And those who know Uganda well, that represents the distribution of the population. So we could really work together. And in working together, we are proposing a partnership that brings the capabilities that uses the infrastructure of the bank. I had the conversation about interest rates. We can reduce interest rates for young people and the youth by delisting them. The interest rates are high for them because they are regarded as high risk. Small guarantees from the UN agencies or other development partners would be able to reduce that interest rate by half. So it's essential things like guarantee. The others who may come and say they want to subsidize the program. The capacity building on youth and women is very, very essential. And that is the team we should never leave behind. Those are the marginalized, they are the vulnerable ones, they are the keepers of our households. And so it is important to focus on them. Then we can't forget collaborating on climate change and mitigation and adaptation, whether it's smart agriculture, whether it's clean energy devices, replacing those who are destroying our forest, whether it's creating alternative sources of income and removing people from forests, all that we can do together. But where the bank can really lead is building small and medium enterprises that starts creating wealth in Africa and creating markets for the goods and services of our people as raw material for production and of goods. That is scaling up financial inclusion, ensuring nobody doesn't have a bank account. Financial inclusion enables people to be on the table where resources are being shared. When we exclude people, it means we have condemned them to their status because they are not enabled. They have dreams, but dreams that are not being funded. Everybody has a valid dream, and we should tap on every valid dream. It's the aggregate of achieved dreams that will transform Africa. The government can help us a lot by creating an enabling policy framework, because that is what the government could do best, and leave the private sector and the development partners and UN to execute. Digitization of national payments will make the environment very, very efficient, and social payments so that we can give dignity and honor. And then UN can help us mobilize all agencies and align efforts for a coordinated impact, scaling up impact. Allow me, moderator, then to finish my few minutes before we go to questions by playing a small video just learning through a clip so that we can see the perspective of how we have implemented and how stakeholders have been affected.
Equity Group Foundation, or EGF in short, is a not-for-profit foundation established in Kenya in 2008. It is the social arm of Equity Group Holdings plc that operates in 6 countries in Eastern and Central Africa. The foundation seeks to transform the lives and livelihoods of the people of Africa through programs activated through 6 pillars. These are the education and leadership development, enterprise development and financial inclusion, food and agriculture, energy and environment, health, and social protection. So far, EGF has equipped more than 33 million people with economic opportunities, skills, tools, and technologies to prepare them for the future. Education and leadership development initiatives break the cycle of poverty and develop the next generation of leaders through increased access to secondary and tertiary education, impacting 26,304 students to date. Notably, EGF's Wings to Fly program admits bright scholars from needy backgrounds to transit to secondary school. The program has an over 96% secondary school completion, with 82% of scholars attaining university entry grades. Another signature initiative, the Equity Leaders Program, connects top-performing secondary school graduates to leadership training, coaching, and mentoring prior to proceeding to university. The program has 13,775 university scholars, 633 of whom are attending or are alumni of leading universities across the world. Under the Enterprise Development and Financial Inclusion pillar, EGF stimulates job creation and economic growth by providing micro, small, and medium enterprises with advice and entrepreneurship training, and further improves financial capability and individual and household security by connecting people to expert financial education and access to financial services.
We are glad that our purpose is distilled down to offering integrated financial services that socially and economically empower consumers, businesses, and communities have attracted the support of like-minded partners. I recognize the MasterCard Foundation for teaming with us to train 2.2 million bubbling young men and women to become entrepreneurs through a financial literacy program.
So far, 191,305 micro, small, and medium-sized business owners have been trained on entrepreneurship, with over 140,000 of the MSMEs have received 57.5 billion shillings under the Young Africa Works program, helping businesses to thrive. Through EGF's Food and Agriculture pillar, the program helps to create jobs, improve market access, and expand agricultural production by working in partnership with small and medium-sized farmers to increase their production capabilities and access technology and financial services. Under this pillar, 2 million small-scale farmers have transformed to farming as a business, while almost 40,000 small and medium-sized farmers have been supported to adopt modern methods of farming for increased yields. The focus of the Energy and Environment pillar is the conservation and smart use of natural resources by expanding forest cover, improving water security, and promoting the use of renewable energy and energy-efficient technologies. The pillar has impacted 780,000 households and businesses to access clean energy products, including solar panels for lighting and heating in homes, schools, and hotels. The pillar has encouraged installation of biodigesters for biogas for cooking and generating electricity to power on-farm activities. More than 240,000 households have embraced clean energy products, while 3.12 million trees have been planted to increase forest cover and conserve the environment. The health pillar provides access to comprehensive health financing and private sector-led, affordable, high-quality and standardized health services. So far, 33 Equity Afya franchise-owned medical clinics are operating in Kenya with more than 305,560 cumulative patient visits. Under the Social Protections Pillar, EGF has committed to reduce social and economic risk and vulnerability and alleviate extreme poverty and deprivation through cash transfers. It provides thousands of marginalized and vulnerable households living in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and South Sudan with social payments through cash transfers. The foundation is involved in 22 programs across East and Central Africa, serving 3.3 million persons. So far, 77.4 billion shillings has been disbursed via equity cash transfer infrastructure. This is but a glimpse of the activities of EGF in our pursuit of championing the socio-economic prosperity of the African people. We invite you to learn more and join us.
So we are very, very excited to be invited to partner with Uganda. We'll bring the experience we have gathered. We are really glad that the UN agencies, we have worked with them closely over the years, and we have already entered. Lastly, let me say that together with the MasterCard, we'll be rolling out a Wings to Fly program targeting 10,000 orphans with the scholarships for secondary education in Uganda starting this year. Thank you very much.
Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please let's give another round of applause to Dr. James Mwangi. Now, this was very deep and thoughtful, and I think your presentation has really deepened our resolve even more and more to work with the private sector and the resident coordinator. You know, at some point in time, both myself and her, our eyes were meeting, just saying, look, we need to do more of this. So thank you very much. And on behalf of the United Nations, also let me congratulate you for the award that you recently had. The Equity Bank CEO received the Oslo Business for Peace Award. So congratulations again. And ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause to Dr. Mwangi. I'm sure before you even get started here, Rosa will give you an award for that. But thank you very much. I think what you said, ladies and gentlemen, please bear with us. We know we've gone beyond time, and we crave your indulgence, but it's a very important conversation. There's a series of questions that have come up, and so Dr. Mwangi, please be on standby. But let me say two things that you said that were very at the heart of the conversation today. The essence of business should be redefined. And I think that's what exactly you have done, looking at beliefs, ethos, philosophy, people-centered approaches. And I'm not going to go into everything, but the fact that you even touched on climate change at the end, I mean, I thought, wow, on climate, education, health, everything. So thank you very much. Now, there are a couple of questions coming, some coming on my phone, some the youth have some questions as well. But let me, in the interest of time, try to pull all the questions together. So if you can have your pen by you, then you can respond at a go so we don't have to go back and forth. The first one is, what kind of UN, and I know you gave the last slide on areas of collaboration, but if you can unpack that a bit, what can the UN government do differently? What can we do differently to fully harness the potential of the private sector and to mobilize more private sector capital in support of the SDGs? What can we do differently? So if you can highlight a few things in that area. The second question is, how can the private sector demonstrate that it's making genuine contributions to achieving SDGs rather than pursuing profits only? I guess you demonstrated that, but that was a question that came through already. And I want Solomon to be on standby to ask the youth question because I think it's best for the youth to ask their own question. But let me read something that's coming from online. I think one of the questions that came, and I guess you already preempted that, was how persons with disabilities can also be engaged in this process. And the other question also that is coming through is about how people in the rural areas can also engage in some of these things that you're talking about. For example, somebody says, how have you planned to engage the micro, small, and medium enterprises Remember, they account for 70 to 80% of the entire private sector in Uganda. So I guess you've spoken to some of these things, but in a second or two, please ask your question, Solomon.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elsie. Also, thank you so much, Dr. Mwangi. Just a question, also the question which my colleague Immaculate was also having about access to finance, which is still a major constraint to young entrepreneurs to grow and expand their businesses, and also the high rate of collateral needed for these loans. Dr. Mwangi, what is Equity doing to help young people, young entrepreneurs to easily access financing for their businesses? Secondly, also, what is Equity Bank is doing more to offer to young people to accelerate their role in achieving the SDGs? But also, lastly, if you allow me, is to, as young entrepreneurs, what learn from you, Dr. Mwangi? What are some of the lessons, like some of us who are in business and want to grow business to the level of your company? What are some of the lessons you would like to give us as young entrepreneurs? Thank you so much.
So, Dr. Mwangi, you have the floor. I think once you give your response, then I would pass on the baton to the resident coordinator to try and wrap up the day. But certainly, you have raised very important points in the area of de-risking, for example, where the UN family already has a youth for business facility. We're happy to discuss that with you, even if it means us flying over now to Nairobi. I think we have a good excuse to come and discuss partnership on that front. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Excellent questions. I will do my very best on what the UN and the government can do differently. I think for the UN, co-creating tripartite programs that leverage on the strengths of government, the UN, and the private sector could go a long way. Because what has been lacking is coordination. Yet the UN has the gravitas to bring all of us together and to really have us to work together and do the coordination law. I think on government, government needs to really identify and prioritize the areas of focus. And for me, the lead economy, where we talked about where the rural people are, the SMEs, the issue of education, the issue of health, agribusinesses, and then have really deliberate and intentional policies that enable the private sector and the UN agencies and its collaborators of development partners to have maximum impact. A once and for all Marshall Plan enabled by policy. We can do whatever we want, but if the policy is wrong, the impact will be mitigated, will be reduced significantly. And then the issue of leveraging on the private sector's already invested capacity. We have 10,000 members of staff who Equity would be willing to give a month of doing good, of serving society. That's already, they are paid, so there is no need so that sunk cost can be leveraged on to reduce the cost of programs. It has been very unfortunate that the UN agencies and development partners always tend to start programs on the ground instead of using the infrastructure that has already been paid for. But for that to happen, then the private sector also needs to avail that. And this is what for me would be called the private sector philanthropy. If all the corporates made their capabilities available to do good, the world will be changed within a very short time. And we move from individual philanthropy to corporate philanthropy, which will be sustained the lifetime of enterprises. The second question is, which is really central. Tell us really on how the private sector can demonstrate that it is making genuine contribution. I think the move to purpose first, tampering capitalism. Private sector have been championing capitalism, but it must tamper capitalism to give it a heart, to give it a face, and to give it a soul. Private sector has, capitalism have been greedy, we must all agree, and it's converting it to be purposeful. If capitalism become purposeful and purpose become people-centric, then it will be genuine effort in participation. The second one is the private sector aligning to the sustainable development goals and making them center of their DNA. It becomes core to the blood of every private sector. If we did that, then because the private sector is in the center of the real economy, then it can lift everybody. The third one is maximizing on partnerships. The private sector must learn how to partner. It's not all about competition. Time has come for collaboration, and it's through collaboration, like what I've seen in Kenya, the listed banks, all of us collaborating to help the government with the management of COVID. And it was being called the collaboration of the team of rivals. But we have a common purpose. So purpose can help us mitigate those aspects. I think there was a question on people with a disability. When we talked about leaving nobody behind, it meant nobody is left behind, irrespective of their circumstances and their situation. And it's those who need most who should be given most. So it is important that we take it that everything must be enabling anybody, including those with a disability. When we talk about the rural areas, the programs for rural areas, particularly agriculture, is the center of any real economy in Africa. Our economies are agricultural based. So we are talking about the programs should be based on the real economy. Real economy is the one that supports livelihoods. It's the one that engages the population. And so it is important for us to get there. We had another question on the issue of access to finance, a very central question asked by Solomon. And I think over the last 3 decades, we have seen Equity trying to de-risk young people so that they can have access loans. The issue is not even the interest rate. Interest rate is an indicator of risk. If we can de-risk young people by partnering with development partners, simple guarantees, like Equity at the moment, we are operating on a guarantee of $450 million, supporting young people so that the pricing of the interest rate is commensurate with the value of the guarantee as opposed to their risk. Then that makes possible. But the best and most effective one is what we have been doing like with the MasterCard Foundation. The issue of de-risking them through capacity building. You enhance their capacity as entrepreneurs, as micro enterprises. Then that is what is most of the time, that is what is required most. Capacity, it comes before credit. The second aspect of it is really looking at collaboration. Assuming that the young people, particularly women, require more than credit, and capacity building is one of them. Mentors and coaches is another very important aspect. So an integrated approach towards the needs of young people is very, very central to this. And lastly is innovative and creative models. Short-term loans like on a mobile can really help young people to start off. Group lending methods using social capital as security can be a major mover of young people to do well. And lastly, let me go to the question of about young people offering what more can we do? And I would say the Bespoke Enterprise Development Program of Equity provides youth with huge opportunities to learn from others, aligning them in the value chains of corporates, ensuring they are tagged. They become part of the value. They are not just startups, but they are startups within a value chain. That would be very, very important. Let me lastly speak to the last question of lessons I've learned. I became the leader of Equity when I was 28. Equity was number 66 out of 66 in Kenya. Today, Equity is number 1 in East and Central Africa in capital base, in balance sheet, in profitability, and in number of customers. What have I learned from there? The first one is patience. It has taken me 30 years. It's a whole generation, a lifetime of a generation that it has taken. Young people must learn to be patient. Rome was never built in one day. We build our lives step by step over years of our lifetime. So patience is very important. The second aspect is being reliable, honest, and dependable. I'm a creation of many people, and they have lended their support to me because I've chosen to run this bank through a very effective corporate governance that assures depositors that their money is safe and that I will not misuse their money. So value systems, and we must embrace national value systems that allows us to depend on each other, to be relied on, and to be trusted. The third one is being hungry for knowledge. We have constantly to keep on learning. The way I was learning this bank in 1993, when I was 28, is very different from what I'm learning. I was learning a $300 balance sheet then. I'm now learning a $10 billion balance sheet. It requires different skills. It requires different competencies. If I didn't remain in school, I would be disqualified from learning this bank. They could have gone globally to look for somebody to learn this bank. So learning should be a lifetime endeavor, constantly improving ourselves. Lastly, is surrounding yourself with people who are better than you and seeking coaching, seeking mentorship, and seeking wisdom from those who are. A lot of people have made mistakes. We don't have to make the mistakes our parents have made, our uncles have made. We can use them as mentors and coaches. To me, that would be, for today, the 4 things I would like to leave with the youth about the lessons that I've taken. But at a personal level, take care of your health. It's the most important asset. And manage your greed. Don't be greedy. Allow a system that really allows shared prosperity. Eat and let others eat. Manage your greed. Thank you very much.
I love this last part, manage your greed. A moment ago, Rosa, I thought we were going to do a joint mission to Kenya, but it looks like Dr. Mwangi has to come back here to have a meeting with all of us, and to the wonderful youth of Uganda. We have the youngest population in Africa, one of the youngest after Niger. So please, Dr. Mwangi, this is the place to look, so we invite you to come with us. Now, just in 2 minutes, I'll be handing over to the resident coordinator. And just to say a few things that are coming online, Rosa, if I may. There's congratulations again, Doctor. I think there's somebody who said Dr. Mwangi's presentation video leaves me appreciating Equity Bank more. At the same time, wondering how far other local communities have gone in improving local incomes and livelihoods of local people. Good example indeed. We also have some inputs from the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Thanks for this very informative meeting. I commend you all on your efforts, and then also outline some of the initiatives, including the partner initiative, which they are happy to support us on. We also have some reflections coming in from, I think, let me see, the United Nations Global Compact. They're talking about they would like to support promoting local business action through the events, etc., promoting the 10 principles of the United Nations Global Compact, and also encouraging local network feasibility studies and others that they would like to support. So there's a lot coming up. I think perhaps we can capture some of these comments and inputs into the report of this meeting later on. On that note, I would like to hand over to the resident coordinator, and I would like to say how humbled I am to have facilitated the session with Honorable Amelia Chambade and Dr. James Mwangi, and it's been very insightful. I don't want to repeat everything, but thank you for your leadership, Rosa, and over to you.
Thank you, Elsie. Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Minister for Trade, the representative of Honorable Minister Kurut, the CEO of Equity Bank and Foundation. What an inspiration. To all our partners online, and I want to also recognize UNECA and UNDESA who joined and who Elsie has highlighted some of their contributions. So as we close today, a few comments and observations for us to take forward. I believe I must start with a vote of thanks and profound appreciation. And my vote of thanks goes to all the staff who have worked tirelessly, UNDP, UNCDF, Office of the Prime Minister, RCO, everybody who worked for the past 8 months to make this meeting possible today. Congratulations and well done. So you do see that patience does pay and reward. And I'm sure that your bosses are right here with me. They will definitely recognize that. I also want to give a vote of thanks to our youth, Linda and Solomon. Job well done with the courage to be here, the questions coming in, and for representing your community with dignity. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations to you as well. Dear colleagues and partners, today we met with the purpose of having a reflection to figure out whether the private sector had a clear role to play in promoting the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in Africa. I believe that after today's discussions and presentations, it is absolutely clear that it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of how fast and how effective we can be working together. So from what I have heard today, I would like to suggest that we can consider adopting the Uganda Private Sector Platform for SDGs in Uganda. And I would like to recommend to the organizing committee that we try to launch it in March 2021. I also would like to use this opportunity to congratulate once again Equity Bank and Foundation for demonstrating your ability to link to rural communities, for demonstrating that you can link the people in the rural communities to the formal economy, to technology and trade. And you can do all of this while respecting and promoting values. To the youth, some of the key values that we heard: patience, dignity, hard work, honesty, accountability, and commitment to continuous learning. So to Equity Bank, this is a formal invitation to you to join the private sector SDG platform in Uganda. And it is my hope that we will get a positive response. Further, based on what we have heard and seen today, on behalf of the UN and Uganda, I want to formally invite you, Dr. James, to come to Uganda to have a partnership dialogue with the UN country team. And we will make sure that we will also have and organize a parallel discussion for you with the youth and other partners in Uganda based on what you have done today. We will leave it up to you and your offices to give us a date. I'm going to take that as a yes to our invitation. Ladies and gentlemen, a very important concept that was passed on by Equity. They demonstrated that we can democratize the access to finances for the unbanked population. More than 80% of the population across the African continent is living and working in the informal sectors. There is no way we can talk about inclusive development if we do not find a bridge for them to join us. So I conclude today's meeting with a firm belief that together we can solve the challenges that we face ahead, that we are the solution that we have been looking for, and that through this platform, we will be able to demonstrate that the private sector are longstanding and permanent partners of the member states of the United Nations as we pursue the dream to leave no one behind. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for your patience and your attention. Have a great day.
Well done.
Oh my God.
Well
Did you see
done.
that?
Yes.
Jeez, I knew they were doing something like that.
And,
Mother have mercy.
and we are not even that much over time. I mean,
Wow.
you know, just half an hour. So
Yeah.
that's,
That one.
Sorry. Okay, this one, it also captures the one of my mind. It is directly to me. But it's okay.
Davina is not calling. Like I'll see social distance with that because she's with. They're almost
What can I write about Dr. Monge? Let me see. He said so many things.
He was with Equity. He was
The founder.
At 28. Wow.
Which will just make you feel like you need another life.
You're like at 28, what was I doing? At 28, I was constructing my house.
You are very ahead.
I think by 30, I should have a house.
You should have a PhD.
Yeah, initially I had thought of a PhD, but my master's really.
They're talking, I think you can listen here online.
Already switched to
Sorry?